I spent about half of the 2020s hosting a podcast called Delayed Replay, recapping and reviewing movies that came out on time in my universe but got delayed in that other universe. And as such, the movies as they were in my universe came out differently. Some listeners not of this universe even think that this is an improvised comedy podcast. And hey, let them think what they want. It's entertaining either way, right? I'm Shinder, and you're listening to Delayed Replay Season 6. Hashtag 6 seasons about movies. New episode every other Saturday. Unless I say otherwise. Hey everyone, so this episode is about a version of weapons that came out in the Delayed Replay universe. It's pretty different from the one that came out recently for some of you in that other universe. And don't worry, this version and Delayed Replay that's being talked about does not ruin the, I guess what you would call the real version if you're from that universe where it came out relatively recently. But anyway, without further delay, enjoy the show. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we recap and review movies that got delayed in that other universe but came out on time in our universe. I'm your host, Shinder, and joining me on this podcast for the first time, it is Emily Kraus. How's it going?
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, for this movie, it just seemed like a natural choice given like how much we've talked about this movie. And of course, it's also a big hit in that other universe too, where it has a different casting from the one that we got. So, yeah. And we're talking about weapons, everyone. I just realized I never like actually said what the title is. Um, but yeah, I guess before diving into it, what's been sort of your experience with, I guess, horror movies in general or psychological thrillers and that type of stuff?
Yeah, so I would say that previously I wasn't really into horror. I didn't really get into it, honestly, except for like once I got out of college, just because it's something that I feel like I'm old enough now to realize, obviously, that like what's happening in the movie isn't necessarily real. So that's just interesting to watch that. And I feel like a lot of premises for horror movies are just an everyday concept that's over exaggerated. So I think that's also cool to see like that creative process going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like you got out of college and then realized you missed the horror of college, so to compensate for that, you watch horror movies finally.
Oh, absolutely.
And looking at this director's filmography, Zach Kreger, he also wrote and directed Barbarian. He was a producer on Companion, and this really surprised me. Apparently, he wrote and directed this comedy in the late 2000s called Miss March. It's like, well, quite a leap in terms of like pretty bad movie to somewhat bigger reputation horror movies, I guess you could say.
For sure.
Yeah. Did you ever see Barbarian or?
I have not yet. It's on my watch list, just because this was the first movie of his that I saw.
Mm.
All I know about Barbarian is that Justin Long is in it. That's all I got.
Oh yeah, that was actually a surprise for me when I first watched it. I was like, oh wait, he's in this, and it's like a whole thing. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting one. Without spoiling anything, I enjoyed it, but I also feel like it could have gone. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a way it could have been done where I might have called it a masterpiece, but like the way it is, I'm like, okay, this is good, I suppose, you know? Um, but yeah, it's really interesting being in this era where it kind of feels like people aren't turning like their noses up or whatever the expression is about horror movies. Like some of them are kind of getting more recognition. At least that's kind of what it feels from my perspective.
I feel like I've noticed that too, especially considering the hype that is surrounding weapons once it released, and also even thinking about things that are coming out like him. I feel like I've seen a
Mm.
lot of press for that one as well.
Yeah, it sort of feels like within the last decade, maybe some filmmakers have realized, okay, it can't just be scary. It's gotta have something to it. It's gotta make people think if people are really gonna be talking about it, which is why you get stuff like, Jordan Peele's stuff like Nope and Get Out and all that stuff, which is really good. And some others that, yeah, it kind of feels like I feel like lots of people look at the 1980s as like a golden era of horror, at least among horror fans, but I kind of wonder if maybe people look back at the 2020s in a similar way.
Yeah. I hope that people do and people will. Because I feel like a lot of interesting things have been coming out lately. So, but yeah, the 80s was also a good time for movies as well, I feel like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, like we mentioned, the version of weapons that came out in our universe, I guess it would have been like last year, but for us anyway. So, but yeah, this one had Pedro Pascal as Archer, Renat Reinsve, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, as Justine, Tom Burke as Paul, Brian Tyree Henry as Marcus. Like this is a pretty stacked cast, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, Pedro Pascal has been having his moment, especially since Mandalorian. But I also think that's funny because he's been around since Game of Thrones, but is just now blowing up. But I feel like having him to lead the movie is also just showing his star power further. And I feel like it's also that idea we were just talking about of people aren't really like, oh, horror movies are lame. Like they're getting the big guns in for this one.
Yeah, the big weapons, one might say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How far into Game of Thrones did he start popping up? Because I only watched the first season, so I don't even remember if I saw him in that or if I got that far. So,
I honestly have never watched Game of Thrones. I just know from people talking about it that he was
mm,
in it. I want to say it was one of the mid seasons, like three or four.
okay. Yeah, that's I mean that's good to hear. Like I don't know, like a while ago I posted that like I only watched the first season and then stopped and someone else commented like I feel like I should be offended by this or
Mm,
whatever. So it was kind of yeah. But yeah, like since Mandalorian it really feels like he's been more in the spotlight. Kind of reminds me of how like this is a weird comparison, but Zach Galifianakis, he was kind of, it wasn't until he was older that he got more attention with like The Hangover and stuff after that. Maybe not so much in stuff recently, but yeah, it's a weird thing that happens where some actors are around for a while and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're the person now, you know?
absolutely. Yeah.
In this film. So the opening was interesting. What'd you think of the way that they were explaining like what was going on with these like children who were like going missing?
Yeah, I actually really liked how they introduced it that way, with the narration because I feel like it sets the tone for the movie of like, oh, this weird stuff is going on. Um, yeah, and even just like, well, the movie in the other universe, I've heard debate about how people think that voiceover was actually one of the kids that went missing. Obviously, just a theory. We don't know for
Mm.
sure, but I know for me at least, it doesn't bother me that we don't know who it is. I feel like it's a different concept than what I've seen before because usually if there is narration, you know the person. Uh, Case in point, like Mean Girls, you know at the beginning it's Katie who is giving
It
that narration.
is?
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't that
Okay.
crazy?
Yeah, what a concept.
Yeah, like just describing your own background. But I feel like also it's interesting tangent, but sometimes since I went to film school, people say that voiceover is not necessary at all. I
Mm.
disagree with that, but that's like just an interesting debate that people like to get into as well.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of a case by case thing. I think when it comes to like the original Blade Runner movie, like, the first version I saw the theatrical, the final cut, and the whatever the other version is called, like pretty much within a short span of time, so I could like compare them. This was back in like the early 2010s or something. The theatrical version has Harrison Ford narrating, and I've always thought, oh, this is actually pretty cool because it feels very noir. That's what you expect from the noir genre. And then in the other versions, they remove the narration, and I come to learn that pretty much everyone else like I talk to about the movie hates the narration, and I'm like, wait, what? That's kind of surprising to me, but like everyone has like a different take on it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
All right. I also appreciate that they use this scary sounding synth music. Like it's not like a jump scare type thing. It's more atmospheric. And so I really like that way of easing the audience into this sort of world.
And I feel like too, especially with the more I'm getting into the horror genre, that it's important to obviously give you the lore of what's going on so you kind of understand like, oh, this is why whatever is happening right now is different, but also just to have that general ambiance instead of just, oh, here's a jump scare, because the jump scare is just like very fast and instantaneous, and it does catch you off guard, but then it's like, oh, like, okay, so that's the thing that's here now. Like, I feel like in the long run it's not that scary. It's kind of a cop out.
Yeah. I also feel like trailers for horror movies sometimes fall into that jump scare type of rhythm. And it's like, man, the editing for these trailers are pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure.
With all these children going missing in this movie, the whole town is in a panic and they have this whole town meeting thing. One of the people there is a web content developer and is like, okay, I'm gonna make a website and it'll, boost the signal, make people aware of these kids who are going missing. We'll spread the word so that people can try to help us find them. What'd you think of that whole angle with this?
I mean, I see where you're coming from, because if I was in that position as a parent of one of these children and you want to find the kids and where are they? Because I mean, theoretically they could be local, but who knows, right? And who knows why they went missing. So it's like also that idea of, hey, if you know where these kids are and you know why they might be missing, the classic like reward system. It's definitely, I feel like, a choice to have in a horror film, because I feel like it almost feels a bit like a gimmick and it's a little comedic in some ways. But I feel like this movie definitely tone wise is horror, but I feel like there's obviously elements of comedic relief peppered in, which is also interesting as a viewer, because I feel like a lot of times in horror movies, they just want to again keep that general spooky vibe. And afterwards, like, if you're like, oh, that was really scary, let me put on like a really funny show that I like The Office, so like you can get the relief after. So I think it's funny to have it scattered throughout the movie, like build up of tension and then comedic relief.
Yeah, like they really try to find the balance between the more serious moments and comedic moments. Like with this web developer person, you see kind of the building of the site. It kind of looks like one of those generic blogs that can be made like very simply, but then once it's done, it looks like the website that the actual like distribute like Warner Brothers uses for the movie and has like all the this is what we know and that whole marketing thing. So like in real life, if you go to that site, this is what it looks like.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of also like in Breaking Bad
I was
when
thinking of that too.
yeah, like when they made the websites like please help my dad and it's all Comic Sans.
Yeah.
It's like graphic design is my passion.
Yeah. Also, a kind of goofy element is how on the website it's like if you can help us with any info, you'll be rewarded $217 or whatever, and that's like the time that they went missing. And it's like, would they really do something like that? Something that ties into the time? It just felt kind of goofy to me.
Yeah, because I feel like also I get it. Like, oh, we're gonna be so cheeky to 17 because it ties into the time, but also I feel like realistically you would offer a much higher reward than $217.
Yeah. I mean, at least it wasn't $2.17, Like,
That's true.
yeah, you probably can't even buy a bag of Ruffles with that, or at least not one that's like satisfactory enough or something. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much.
But you have all these people who are blaming Justine, again, played by Renat, last name I'm not sure how to pronounce, and they're like kind of suspicious of her because it's like, oh, these kids were part of her class. Like, what'd you think of all this finger pointing going on here?
I feel like it's the classic thing we do, right? We always want someone to have the blame or like something to like someone to fall back on. And I feel like we even saw it like in something that always comes to my mind when I think of this like finger pointing, like it's your fault, your fault, your fault, is Into the Woods because there's literally a song about like, oh, well, things are falling apart right now because it's your fault. Like, you're the one that sold the cow and got the beans and blah, 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 blah. So I feel like we always just want to try to rationalize things even if they can't be rationalized in actuality, we always want to try to have some sort of solution. So I think that's why people went so fast to point fingers at Justine because, like, oh, well, what's the common denominator? It's your class.
Yeah. Like when people don't have the answers, they really want to latch onto something, even if it's not, whether or not they know that it's the true thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So we do see a bit of Justine's life during all this. Like we see her at home and she's like trying to watch TV but can't find the batteries in her remote and is trying to look for them. They kind of try to build this suspenseful thing where it's like, oh, is someone gonna be there in the house or something? What'd you think of this whole scene?
Again, classic horror move, I feel like, that we're trying to create this general spooky ambiance and trying to build this tension of like, oh, who's gonna be there? Is there someone in the house? And even just again, quite an interesting choice that they chose to make so much tension around her trying to find batteries for a remote. Because usually it's just you're sitting and watching TV. But in this case, she was actually doing a task. Again, I thought that was kind of funny. It was just looking for batteries, but I mean, we all need batteries for a remote, so also relatable.
Yeah, and they also make a point to show us with the cinematography that the power button on the TV, like the TV is kind of high up on the wall and the button is kind of out of the way, like way in the back of it. So it would really be more convenient to and not as easy to press a button to just use the remote to do it. So I thought that was a really interesting way of I don't know if like covering up a plot hole or whatever is a good way to put it, but to explain the reasoning for that, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, when's the last time you used a power button on your TV in actuality, even though it's right there on the side, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And at some point she's like looking under the furniture and she's like, oh, the batteries are all the way over there, and she's like reaching under and the camera is like panning above. It's like we're kind of expecting something to happen. What'd you think how that all played out?
Again, I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, is someone in this house? Are we gonna find out who took the kids? Is it some larger being, right? And then when as she's like searching, I also thought it was kind of funny when you know how things get lost in your couch, like that's the joke for everybody, like loose change. But she found a whole water bottle under the couch cushion. That was pretty crazy. I was like, okay, like you just didn't notice that you're sitting on your water bottle. Okay.
Yeah. What was strange about the water bottle, though, and like as she's examining it, she's noticing that there's no brand on it. Like it's just a water bottle without like the paper thing around it that would show the brand. And she's like, was this mine? Where did it come from? And like the way that she's trying to like open it and like sniff it, and she seems like her reaction is like really believable. Like you see her face, and it's like, oh yeah, that is a really smelly bottle of water. That might be something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's great acting right there.
Yeah. And then she decides that she wants to have someone else examine this water bottle. So who does she go to other than the local nuclear physicist? Which I don't know. Did I miss the reasoning for this here? Like, what am I missing here?
See, I looked at that as because, I mean, I get it. She's a teacher for elementary schoolers, but she only has so much expertise in one area. And she's like, listen, I found a suspicious liquid. And so some sort of scientist has to know what's in this bottle. I'm sure he has a lab that he can run tests in, you know. Nuclear physicist, that's a bit of a choice.
Yeah.
I would try to maybe go to like a chemist or like a biologist, but I guess that was the only person she knew that could have access to a lab, and they were in the town too. So,
Yeah. I kind of wonder if maybe they chose this occupation for him to sort of tie into the title because, weapons, nuclear weapons, and every now and then they make some sort of allusion to, nuclear war and whether it's reasonable to have this sort of game of chicken between different people where each person has nuclear weapons. It's like if anything happens, we destroy each other and ourselves. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of feels like a reach in order to tie into those themes. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, definitely a bit of a stretch. And like you said, they easily could have just tried to put nuclear physicists in to try to loosely tie to the title. Because theoretically, she could have gone to anyone with her water bottle.
Yeah. I do kind of like this sequence though, where it's like a montage examining the liquid, trying to go through some tests and the microscope and stuff. What'd you think of the music during this montage?
Generally speaking, I thought the montage was very interesting just because, again, like it's almost like, are we losing focus of trying to find these kids? Because for that sequence, the whole movie, for me at least, became about what's in this water bottle. But I'm still over here like, where are these kids?
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know how I feel about them using Don't Stop Believing because
Yeah.
because yes, like don't stop believing you can find the solution. about what's in your water bottle, but also don't stop believing that you can find these kids. Like it was quite a choice, I will say that.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure how to feel about that. It kind of took me out, to be honest. It's like, okay, where are we going for the with this? The movie is kind of like that. It makes you wonder what's with these choices that they're making. Is this all going to tie together neatly somehow? Really keeps you wondering throughout.
Yeah, and it also makes me wonder if it was one of those cases where like they're pitching it and they're like, okay, and then there's this one scene where they're investigating the liquids in this water bottle. And the producers are like, oh, yeah, yeah. They're just encouraging it because it's like, oh yeah, like we like your other stuff. So we see the vision. They act like they do, but they really don't. And they just kind of throw money at a project, even though in the end you're like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so after all these tests, they're kind of like, we're not 100% sure what this liquid is. It's almost like it's not of this world. I thought that was a way to continue the mystery and to suggest that maybe it does tie into all this other stuff. But at the same time, it also kind of feels like, okay, they wrote this down in like a draft of the script and then couldn't really figure out what line to put here or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and then that moment for me also took me out because it's one of those things where we know going in the genre is horror, but when you add an element of dialogue that even suggests, oh, it's from another world, for me, I go right to sci-fi. So
Yeah.
then I'm thinking, okay, whoever or whatever took these kids, is it now related to aliens? Are we gonna see aliens come in now? And then that's a tonal shift. But then also, I think it's a little bit of cheap writing for them to say, like, oh, we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree there. And we do see, this movie does cut to other people in the town and what they're up to. Like, well, these other people, we mentioned Pedro Pascal as Archer, and we're so used to him being like the child protector and all these other different projects. So, what'd you think of the type of role that he had here and how similar or different that was?
I mean, it's really not surprising for him to be like a dad figure in this, just because, again, we've seen in Mandalorian, in Last of Us, that he's kind of adopted this role of like, I'm your like surrogate father sort of
Yeah.
thing. And
Or
then
even literal one in Fantastic Four.
yes, yes, I was about to say like he actually has a child of his own in that one. um,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's again one of those cases where once you play a specific role, you're kind of typecast as that in your other pieces. For him, it works because again, we've seen it and like I believe him as like the father figure. But also I do hope that he can branch out to other kinds of roles because again, this is basically what we've seen him as. Like, I don't know, I kind of want to see him as a villain in something.
Yeah, I mean he was one in Wonder Woman 1984, but there are mixed opinions on that and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, that movie is like very forgettable. So it's like, and I don't feel like he was like a super villain, like he's not
Mm,
like Doctor Doom that's like coming for like the new Avengers movie, right?
right. Yeah. Now I'm trying to think of if there's like some other DC villain he could play instead of Maxwell Lord now that they've rebooted things. I don't know. Do people want to see Pedro Pascal as Darkseid or Brainiac or something? Like, I don't know. But I did think that they maybe made this a little bit different for him, where in this instance, yes, he wants to help the children, but no child is with him at the moment. So, slowly but surely, he's maybe branching out of that role. It's like the children are not present around him, but he's trying to like solve this whole thing, examining footage, trying to map it out, figure out where they are.
Hmm.
And as he's trying to go to these different places, um, he goes to this abandoned gas station. What'd you think of this particular setting?
Yeah, I mean, for me, things that are abandoned are always a little bit creepy because, like, we know it happens. We know that sometimes things go out of business and they don't have the means to necessarily tear it down. It just stays there. And yes, you'd find an abandoned gas station in a town. That's normal. But it doesn't, like, for me, necessarily be like, oh, like, this is a really spooky setting. Like, I feel like it would be different if he went to like an abandoned house because,
Mm.
we just automatically kind of associate, oh, abandoned house with like haunted house. What, like, there's going to be some type of ghost or like weird spirit presence in there. But when I think gas station, I don't think that. Obviously, the association is, oh, I go here strictly to fill up my car. Like, I don't have any other like, oh, this is spooky place. Like, oh, people are hanging out at the gas station.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that this gas station still has like bright colors and whatnot. They don't really try to make it look like it's as run down as they could have made it. So it makes one feel very aware that, yeah, this is a film set and they didn't even like try too much to make it look creepy. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, they could have at least like chipped some of the paint or like not have those neon colors. Like it definitely looked like a set that they had just used for another project. And they're like, abandoned gas station. We'll just use this. We don't have the time to reconfigure it to look abandoned.
Right. Yeah, and so he's looking around. He is trying to look for any clues, but he does find this hidden door behind these shelves and he tries to open it up. But what'd you think of where this door led to?
Yeah, so I wasn't expecting the door to lead into like this bright, colorful world that it kind of reminded me of that one episode of Adventure Time where there's like the pillow fort and they kind of just keep crawling through. I was not, again, expecting that because we are in theoretically, because at this point I'm like, is this even a horror movie anymore? Because we've mentioned like maybe aliens are at work here. So I'm thinking sci-fi. We had a whole montage of people trying to figure out this liquid in this water bottle that's not even water in the end. And we have a web content developer making try to find our kids site. So at this point, I'm like, are we just creating comedy? Are we trying to create a commentary on society and how we're not focusing on the things that should be important? Because that's what it felt like in that moment.
Yeah, and funny that you mentioned Adventure Time because I've recently been trying to go through it again. Like I never completed the show. I got pretty far into it and then got busy with other stuff, but I've been going through it again and also reading like these Adventure Time digital comics that I acquired like within the past year or something that they've been fun. So yeah, I totally get like what you mean, like those pillow fort vibes, and he's really wondering what the hell is going on here. Within this bright, colorful world, do you also see like this giant levitating, colorful water pistol? What is this even about? Like that moment here, like I kind of don't know.
Yeah, because again, we associate horror movies with a dark color palette. And now we got a bright color palette. But then you see a gun. So you think it's happy, but it's also making me think at this point, is it supposed to parallel the town where the movie is set in that, oh, like this seems like a normal town, but under the surface, something weird's going on. So I thought of that as a possible, like maybe that's why this is happening. I mean, I feel like it's kind of cheap to just say they had the gun in there because the title of the movie is Weapons, and they're like, oh, let's put a weapon in there. But very out of place in this like bright, like kind of cutesy, almost like, like what the Teletubbies, like what their hometown kind of looks like. But then there was that one guy that I thought was kind of weird in this like alternate dimension, I'll say, where he's like kind of like a troll and he's like kind of hunched over and he talks like this and he's like, "Oh hey, like welcome. You want to come over to my house?" Like I was like, "Okay, I guess we're trying to loop some horror back into here because he is just very unsettling and he's like very persistent to get like Pedro Pascal over. He's like, "Come on, I got a new TV. I can make you cookies." Like it's like,
Yeah.
are you being creepy? Are you trying to be nice?
Well, as this progresses, I think what it ends up being is like, this troll. And again, interesting decision putting a troll in here because that can really fit into a couple different genres. Like it can be horrific, it can be part of a fantasy, or it can be part of an even more colorful, like kid fantasy type thing. So I guess it's kind of trying to play with our expectations, but I think it becomes clearer that this troll has a crush on Pedro Pascal, much like many of the people who watch his movies.
Mm-hmm. I mean, thank goodness he didn't say like, "Oh, I think you're daddy." Oh, because that would have been so weird. I would have left the theater.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was so again, kind of going back to like what we were talking about of like where does this troll fit into this movie? Because like it's again genre bending and it's like okay, I guess like you're being nice because he's like, come on over. I got a little mattress that you can sleep on. It's really comfy. And he's like all like getting up in Pedro's like personal bubble. So yeah, I think he's like really like, come over, please come over. But Pedro's just not having any of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, like once he realizes like what's going on, he like tries running back to the doorway, but he's having such a hard time trying to find where he came in because a lot of the setting looks very much the same, and it's pretty much like a labyrinth for him.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the other storylines going on in the town is you have Austin Abrams as this guy named James who's kind of breaking into places and stealing stuff, and you have this police officer who's like a foil against him named Paul. He's played by Tom Burke. I guess they named him Paul because it's kind of part of the word police. I don't know if that was just a coincidence, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the movie, there was a lot of stuff going on that I was like, I don't know if you're trying to tie into like things or wordplay. So that could, I didn't think of that theory, but they could have been doing that for all we know.
Yeah, and one of the houses that James breaks into has this video game, and it's one of the Battlefield video games. And so he just sits there for hours playing this game until like he's found out. Like, what did you make of all of this?
So again, this is a moment where I feel like the movie, like it has this traction and then it derails a little bit. We've seen this before. We've seen it with the water bottle. We saw it with Pedro and this troll. And now we're seeing it with like the battlefield. And it was also interesting to me because, I learned in college every scene is important. And just because a character might in their free time play video games, you don't necessarily need to see it on the screen unless it's moving the plot forward. In this case, they left the scene in, and I think it was like a solid 3 minute scene of him playing video games. So then I'm here thinking, okay, is this just the movie derailing, or are they doing something deeper here? Again, trying to relate it back to the title of Weapons or the theme of like, I'm convinced at this point is like, oh, something big and important like these kids going missing is happening, but we're not focusing on that because we're too distracted by other stuff going on in our life.
Yeah, that very well could be it. And Paul, he finds James, having broken into this house, and James is like feeling so confident about how well he's been doing in this video game that he's like, you know what, I'm gonna fight this cop. And so then we get like this hilarious fight that ensues.
It's it reminds me like to make like another movie reference here of
Yeah.
Gran Turismo of like this that concept of like, oh, yeah, you've been racing a car on a video game, so I'm gonna have you try to race a car in real life. And I feel like that's what happened with James and Paul here. He's like, oh yeah, like I'm really good on the battlefield and like, and then he tries to fight Paul and it's just like he can't even like throw a straight punch.
Yeah, it was very comical. Like Paul really got the upper hand, James was very delusional here and the aggressiveness just wasn't enough. But there is like a split second where James's expression on his face, like he looks like a scary troll, and it's like, whoa, okay, so there's finally a connection here. Like, is he the same troll or turning into one? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, or again, like, because I think it might also have been the phenomenon, at least this was like what I was thinking, that when something happens in your life and then you're talking to one of your friends and like it parallels and you maybe didn't like tell each other what was going on in the moment, but it just happened to play out that way. So I was also wondering like, is this one of those cases where this is going on over with Pedro Pascal and this troll, and then James also looks like a troll? Is it just like supposed to be a parallel, even though like they don't really have any contact with one another?
Yeah, and is this supposed to be some sort of reference to like people who play video games who are trolls? Like what's this? I don't know. This just feels very South Park in some senses, except maybe not as clean of connections here.
Yeah, absolutely. Or it could have just been something different, right? Like, we don't really know all about James, right? Like, he could like the movie Trolls, and maybe that was part of the backstory that never really played into the movie. And they're just like, oh, well, he likes trolls, so we gotta make him look like a troll for a scene.
Yeah, that very well could be it. He does seem like he has an affinity for 80s fantasy or horror movies, just based on the collection he's like lugging around. So that could be part of it, definitely. But yeah, Paul brings him into the station, and the police there are like, man, what's going on in this town? This is all really weird. It's like we get like, I don't know, 5 minutes of them just, talking about everything. But some of this conversation is kind of not important. So I'm kind of wondering if it's again showing us that some people kind of just sit around and don't do enough to help solve things. So yeah, I don't know. That's just a vibe I was getting here.
Yeah, I agree because I think at one point, like obviously they were talking about like, oh, all this weird stuff's going on in the town, the children are missing, like this guy is like sitting in people's houses playing Battlefield and then looks like a troll. But then they were also talking about whether or not they wanted this like new little place in like one of those like strip malls. They were debating whether it should be opened as a Jersey Mike's or a Jimmy John's. And I don't know. To me, like, I get it. Like, that happens in everyday life, right? But they're also police officers, and I just didn't see how that would really impact them.
Yeah. This is kind of a tangent, but I mean, that's what happens on this podcast anyway. I was recently listening to this other podcast I listened to called How Star Wars Is It?
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about how weird it is whenever there's like a dentist office next to some sandwich place. Like they don't say sandwich place, like they say right next to, and then these two co-hosts in unison. Like one says Jimmy's John's, one says Jersey Mike's. It's like they both thought of these J named sandwich places at the same time. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, we also another character that we're introduced to or shown some of is Brian Tyree Henry as Marcus, who is the school principal here. What'd you think of what they showed of his whole day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting him to be shown like his home life, right? I thought we were just going to keep him shown like, oh, he's a principal, authority figure, him at work. I was not expecting them to follow him home. And then we find out that he has his own like little home basement gym. But for whatever reason, he's obsessed with like nunchucks.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know if they were trying to take like I will say the cheap route and show his obsession with nunchucks just because this movie is called Weapons. Or they were just trying to show his characterization of like, not many people are like carrying around nunchucks in their home, and especially they're not like trying to do workouts with a nunchuck. So I don't know if they're just trying to make him look goofy or what.
Yeah, I think in the way in the background you kind of see a poster of like the 1987 Ninja Turtles cartoon,
Mhm.
which is the version that lots of people love. Personally, I prefer the 2003 one, but I do like how varied the tones of the different incarnations of Ninja Turtles are. But yeah, it pretty much feels like, we learn a bit more about Marcus, how when he was a kid, he was bullied in school and he wished that he had some sort of way to defend himself then, and he kind of feels bad about kids not being able to defend themselves at school, especially the ones who are missing. He's like wondering, are they able to protect themselves against whatever's happening? And so, he's taking this personally. He wants to find these kids and like take things into his own hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's sort of going around investigating and he talks to Justine, who like fills him up brings him up to speed about this whole water bottle thing. And they're still trying to figure that whole thing out. And one of the lab assistants, he accidentally takes a sip of it and it makes him go crazy and try to like go after people, and he starts looking like a troll, and it's like, whoa, okay, so I guess it does really tie in together.
Yeah, yeah, all the troll references. It also like makes you wonder if that was, I know movies are typically only written by one person, but it almost makes you wonder if it was a similar situation to when they're writing TV shows and the writers' room they have inside jokes on something. And for whatever reason, like the person who wrote this, like they had an inside joke about trolls, and they're just like, oh, like just let me like slip this into the screenplay.
Yeah, like let me cook or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and they hired a pretty terrible lab assistant if he's just gonna go around drinking these water bottles that are in the lab with like no label on it. Um, and yeah, like Marcus ends up having to confront the crazy lab assistant guy and has to like use his nunchucks, and they really don't shy away from the violence here. There's blood and stuff, so it kind of reminds you, oh yeah, this is a horror movie. I kind of forgot.
Yeah, I think it is like what we were talking about, how like sometimes like the movie goes on like tangents, but like I feel like it does try to bring it back to like remind you like no, like at its core this is a horror movie. So they have to like include, I feel like almost those cliche elements of like a horror movie. Having like, oh, there's like some monster, or there's some like unexplainable event, and also blood.
Yeah, definitely. And so once this lab assistant dies, a weird thing happens where his body sort of disappears, and in its place is like this outline of his body, but it's a door with a knob in it, and it's like in the ground. And it's like they're like, "Whoa, should we open this?" And so they do open it and go inside. What'd you think of this moment here?
So again, it brought me back to when Pedro Pascal was at the gas station and he went over into like this like rainbow Teletubby-esque universe. So I was expecting that this time. But they did do a good job of subverting my expectations because it was not some playful, colorful universe. No, it was like dark and dingy, and I got like these kind of grungy vibes from it. So I was like, okay, so I guess we're still kind of like going along the horror path right now.
Yeah, and it starts to make the audience wonder, like, are these portals into completely different worlds? Like, what's the connection here? It's like at this point, it kind of feels like a free for all type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how do these portals tie into the greater plot of the movie? Because at first, especially at the gas station scene, I thought, oh, he's gonna go into like this portal, or maybe it's just, something like a storage unit and he finds like all the kids are there, right? But that hasn't been the case for both of them now. And so at that point, to me, it seems like, oh, this is a pattern. Like they're gonna keep finding portals, and I'm assuming it's a portal at this point, and they're just gonna keep going through it and seeing like different multiverses, I guess.
Yeah, so they're kind of being led astray and sort of like not really sure what's going on. But when we cut back to Paul and James, Paul hears James whispering in his cell. He keeps saying like they are flying, and Paul is like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And James keeps saying, "They are flying, they're flying, they're flying," and we kind of see like in James's mind's eye, the missing kids are like, I guess, flying and moving their arms as if they're flapping wings or something. And it's like, oh, this is really weird. So, but yeah, what'd you think of that part?
Yeah, it almost reminded me of like in The Conjuring when they like see like the demon's like, oh, she made me do it. She made me do it. And then it's talking about like the demon possessed me to kill the children. But he's like, oh, they're flying. They're flying. And again, it's like you kind of go to this like creepy thing of like, oh, are they something with the kids? And yeah, he did see the kids like flapping their arms. But again, it almost again subverts your expectations where you think it's gonna be something horrifying, but this time it's actually like more comedic.
Yeah, and so Paul keeps on interrogating him, being like, "Where are the kids? Where are they?" That type of thing. Um, and this, I feel like this interrogation went on for too long, in my opinion. Like, it kind of ran out of juice after a couple minutes, and like, I don't know, like, what was the movie doing here at this point, really?
Yeah, it almost felt like the writers were like losing steam in this point too, because I know like this is more of like a principle for improv, but I feel like sometimes it can also carry over to like scripted media, is that don't ask too many questions, or don't ask questions, period,
Right.
and don't repeat information. So I feel like in a movie, if like someone says like, "Oh, where are the children?" I don't know. Well, then don't keep asking where are the children, because I feel like, oh yeah, it's supposed to be an intimidation tactic, but James clearly doesn't know.
Right. And so after this has gone on for a while, Paul is like, he decides, I'm gonna try to be a good cop, and then he like gets a cup of water and goes over to him and is like, he wants some, and then all of a sudden James recoils when he sees the water, and it's like, oh, so does does something different happen to a troll or a trollish person depending on like what they drink? Like there's something going on here.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of struck me at first as like a fear of water too. So it's like, okay, is he afraid of water like because he's a troll, or is this James just he has a fear of water and this is part of his backstory. We just like never knew, but the writer was like, well, in my mind, I know his backstory, so I'm just going to insert this random detail.
Yeah. And so he tries to like, you know, get him to drink the water because at this point he's like grasping at straws, being like, I have a feeling that this is the only way something will actually happen. And so he basically just shoves it into his mouth. And James does punch him in the face after he does that, but he still gets enough water in him to like start looking like he's having a seizure, and it's like, oh, what's gonna happen now? But yeah, what'd you think of how this ended, like with him?
Yeah, I think again, they're just showing about, oh, like he can, water isn't the best for him, which is very interesting because, we all are told to like drink your water for, you know, whatever reason. I know it's like a survival thing. Obviously, we need water to live. But his reaction to it to me was just, it was crazy. So I was like, okay, are we going back to like this horror genre cliche of like, oh, like something weird needs to happen. Let's put in a seizure?
Yeah. And so when he stops having a seizure, like for a moment we think that he might be dead, but then he like sort of spits slash vomits out the liquid and it creates another portal. And out of that portal, like they don't go inside, but instead we see like the kids flying out of it, like just f flying into the station and then out the window and all over the town. It's like, oh, whoa, okay, very Alfred Hitchcock vibes now, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So it was also interesting to me because then at that point, since the kids were in a portal in another dimension, I guess, so then I'm like, why wasn't this introduced earlier, right? Like when we first went through a portal with Pedro and he encountered the troll, how come like the troll didn't at least like drop hints of like, oh, like I know what's going on in your world, right? Or was it supposed to be just random? Because all the portals that we have seen don't seem like they're connected to one another, but yet the kids came out of one.
Yeah, it really feels like a little bit of foreshadowing would have gone a longer way if they had just planted some seeds earlier. And now, as it is, it feels like these are very disconnected worlds, almost like how in Nightmare Before Christmas are all the doors for different holidays. And I'm not clear on whether they go to like the same planet, just different town or different worlds or whatever. I guess you could kind of tie that into Kingdom Hearts in some way, but yeah, like they raise all these questions about portals to the point where it's like, I'm kind of not sure that portals were the way to go with this movie.
Yeah, I don't think so. I honestly was expecting the solution to where the kids were going to be was going to be something like, oh, they got abducted and they're in someone's house. Similar to what happened in like, the other universe when
Yeah.
that weapons version, but this was just totally different. And I don't know if it was supposed to be a statement of like, we want to like do something genre bending, or it was just like we're grasping at straws at this point because we need to end this movie and we don't know how.
Yeah, and I really feel that toward the end when it feels like they kind of throw things out the window by just having, we get the bright colored location with Pedro and the troll, and we get the others who are in that dark dreary one. They encounter some trolls there as well, and we cut back and forth to them trying to kill these different trolls, and it's like it's not until the trolls are dead that the kids finally start to calm down and like land on the ground and be more normal. And it's like, okay, I guess the trolls did something to with these kids and now they're not under their spell anymore now that they're dead. But it's like you couldn't have mapped this out a bit better. Like this whole thing kind of feels like it was just improvised, you know?
Yeah, especially again, like with the first time we went through a portal with like Pedro and he encountered the troll, there could have been some sort of foreshadowing or like some sort of seeds planted where like the troll was like, oh, like you look like one of the kids or something like that. So it's like he already knows, like, oh, this troll is somehow connected to the kids going missing. But it just seemed like, yeah, kind of haphazardly thrown together, like, oh, trolls, we like trolls. We're just going to put them in here and it's going to be like a big reveal. Surprise, the trolls were in on it.
Yeah. And, as things are wrapping up, the website gets, it has like an update that says children found and includes like this article or whatever. And then we get this closing narration that's like the website stayed up for about another month before it was taken down, before the renewal fees for the website took place. And it mentions how like those other characters are the ones who went through these portals, the narration's basically like, we never did see them again, but at least the missing kids got found, and that's what's most important.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though for a lot of the movie, it seemed like that was forgotten about the children.
Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of makes me wonder if they're trying to like hammer a message of like, hey, you don't pay attention to these terrible things that happen. You should focus on those instead or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but then we get the end credits and it's accompanied by some upbeat rock song that do doesn't really fit the mood of the movie all that much. It's really weird.
Yeah. Because again, even though the credits is like, oh, the movie is over, they try to find something that fits in the genre. Like it reminded me of earlier with the medley when they were like the Don't Stop Believin' sequence. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, like I guess you can put that in there, sure, but it's just confusing to the audience as to what is the focus of this movie. And again, like I went into it thinking it was horror, but by the end I'm like, was it just really a comedy in disguise?
Yeah. Like, what was it just like some comedian disguised in a Halloween costume? Like, what was this movie?
Yeah, for real. It was all over the place. The point of the movie, I feel like, easily got lost. And
Yeah.
it's like by the end with the narration, I thought it was just gonna say, and everyone was really bad at their job. Like, because they were.
Yeah. Yeah, like if there is a message, there's a way to, movies can have a message that's worth telling, but if they don't execute it in the best way, then that really muddies the message and makes it feel like it wasn't as worth it as it should have been if you're conveying that type of message.
Yeah. It also reminds me of like the importance of when you're like storyboarding, like people have recommended to me, like make sure you have like note cards of things you want to happen and then you lay it out in the order. But it almost felt like for this one, they like wrote ideas, random ideas on cards and kind of shuffled it together and was like, okay, this is it.
Yeah, or they had them in order and accidentally dropped them like the dean and community or something.
Yes, yes. And they're trying to scramble to pick them up and they're like, oh yeah, this was the order.
Yeah. Was there anything else you want to bring up before we go into final thoughts?
No, I feel like I touched on everything that was important. And same with you. I think the scenes you picked to discuss were very key into like my final thoughts on the whole movie.
Yeah. Important in air quotes, in
Mhm.
this particular movie.
Mhm.
So what are your final thoughts, score out of 10, and what's your unit of measurement for the score? So like instead of stars, it could be like an object related to the movie or something.
Sure. So for my score in terms of like out of 10 and like with the object, so out of 10, I would give it a 4. and my object is like the gun that Pedro found in like the rainbow portal. Um, yeah, I mean, like we've already discussed, it just seems like this movie, they had a good idea, but it quickly lost traction. Even as early as like when they had the conference of like, let's find the kids, and they brought out like a web content developer, that lost me a little bit because it was like, that was the moment I was like, oh, well, maybe we're just trying to have some comedic relief. But then as the movie went on, I was like, okay, do we even know what a horror movie is right now? Because I don't think we do. I think we're throwing things together and we're trying to solely rely on the star power of like Pedro Pascal to save us. But clearly, you shouldn't rely on your stars to save the movie. It should be a solid script. Makes me wonder why Pedro decided to pick this movie. Like, did he just want to do something quirky? I don't know. But I mean, my takeaway though was that people really lose focus of what's important. So if they were trying to get that across, it did come across. And if they weren't trying to get it across, well, that's what I took away anyway.
Yeah, I totally get you. There was some cinematography I kind of liked in this movie, and sometimes I do like it when movies get weird, they can get surreal and not seem as coherent on the surface, even if it's more coherent the more you think about it. But I've spent so much time thinking about this movie, the version of it that we got anyway, and it's like I don't feel like there's really something coherent beneath the surface. It really just feels thrown together. And so I kind of feel like, disappointed that this is how it came out when they could have, let it cook longer, maybe run some tests with different actors or something like I don't know. But yeah, I think I'm there with you. I think I'd also give this 4 out of 10 batteries. So,
Yeah.
yeah, not as good as the version of weapons from that other universe, which is like top notch.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that this weapons in this universe, just wait till it's on streaming.
Yeah, just stream it.
Yeah, put it on as background noise.
Yeah, don't even rent it digitally. Yeah, don't pay for it.
Absolutely not.
All right, so I guess that'll do it for this weapons discussion. Thanks for joining me, Emily. What is there anything you want to plug in, whether it be socials or even just like a recommendation of a movie or show or something?
Sure. If you want to find me and all my shenanigans, I'm on Instagram. You can find me at KrausGangOrdye, all one word. It's Kraus Gang or Die. Yeah, follow me there. Look at my photos, see my life. That's where I'm most active anyway.
Yeah, it's probably more coherent than this version of weapons.
I try.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that'll do it. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. Next episode will come out 2 weeks from today. And without further delay, have a good day. All right, this is Steven after the fact. Something we forgot to mention is that June Diane Raphael played Donna, who was Pete's wife in the movie. And she didn't really do much. She was kind of just there. But has a bit more to do in the other version of weapons from that other universe, which is worth watching. Anyway, you could email delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on trolls, the creatures, or the ones on the internet. You can follow me via the social media listed in the show notes, and also go to stevenshinder.com for info on my standalones and stepping stones novels, which include horror elements as well as comedy, fantasy, and sci-fi. And also check out Yes Shift, the podcast I do with my dad. We recently interviewed Derek Schulman of Gentle Giant about his upcoming memoir Giant Steps, and Lots of stuff going on there. Also, an upcoming fan Q&A with Todd Zuckerman, the drummer of Styx, over at drumtalktvbrilliance.com on October 1st at noon Pacific US time. Now, without further delay, here's my other self to talk about what he's been watching. Hey everyone, this is Steven from that other universe. I think last time I may have forgotten to mention having finished the recent season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 3 that is. I thought it was a fun season overall, but I do understand people's complaints that certain campy episodes would feel more doable in a longer season. I personally didn't mind them, but yeah, I don't know. Streaming is a different beast altogether. But on the other Star franchise, Star Wars, there was a new trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu, and I'm kind of about it. Like, it didn't really excite me like other Star Wars trailers of the past. I'm not quite dead set on rooting for the movie, but I'm not rooting against it either. If anything, I want something really new from Star Wars to do super well at the box office, like the upcoming Starfighter movie, though I'm sure Mandalorian and Grogu will do well enough given that people really love Grogu. I think people on the internet really underestimate that, you know, the Grogu love is real in real life. So there's that. There's also Star Wars Visions trailer. Really excited for more new episodes of that at the end of October. Also watched Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy Shards of the Past. That was such a fun watch because that corner of Star Wars doesn't really have to worry about canon. It's able to mix and match characters, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun. It felt more well done than the previous Rebuild the Galaxy special. This miniseries, it didn't feel like the callbacks, those types of jokes, the nostalgia bait. It didn't feel too over the top somehow. I really can't explain it, but yeah, I was feeling higher on this time around. Marvel Zombies, I don't know. It's the comic series I wasn't really into. In fact, I thought it was pretty shallow, but whereas the TV show, the animated series, is more compelling. But even then, people are really, I don't know, feeling excited by the violence in the show, but like, I don't know, that's not really enough for me. I do like the character moments. The animation is pretty decent, but overall I think it's like a 6, maybe 6.5 at best out of 10 for me. It's just, I was watching it late at night and it felt like a slog to get through and trying to stay awake for it, whereas there was something else I watched right after that was even later that I stayed wide awake for. I'll get to that in a moment, but sticking to comic book related stuff, Peacemaker is 6 episodes into the second season. They finally had a reveal, which feels a few episodes too late because lots of people on the internet already knew what the twist was going to be. And so, yeah, the pacing for Peacemaker Season 2 has felt really off to me. I don't know that they needed to drag all this out for these many episodes. The last 2 episodes have to be really good. I'd see other people enjoying the show, and maybe I'm just an outlier. In fact, I feel like an outlier for Alien Earth as well. I see some people really like it, but in the end, I just don't know how you set an alien story on Earth and have it not feel like a threat to Earth as a whole. In fact, part of that is that they set it before the first movie, and I feel like the franchise really needs to explore future parts of the timeline and there was interesting stuff with the synths, but overall, just stretching out an alien story across a season felt really weird to me personally. And yeah, I just felt kind of empty by the end of it, weirdly enough, even though they try to make it so that the ending has some sort of big moment. What else? So, like I alluded to, I stayed up really late right after watching Marvel Zombies, watching a somewhat recent film called Winter, Spring, Summer, or Fall. It's a romance film. It stars Jenna Ortega and Percy Hines White, who weirdly enough played Xavier in the Wednesday TV show, which I'm still only halfway through that show, but finally season 2 anyway, through, but finally gonna get back to that season. Watch the rest of season 2 in a few days from when this comes out. But yeah, winter, spring, summer, or fall, I felt wide awake watching it. I stayed up until 3 a.m., which was around when it finished. And I thought it was a really well done, down to earth romance movie about young love, and that transition from high school to college. I don't know. In some ways, it kind of feels like a Say Anything for a new generation. And yeah, I was impressed with this film. I give it an 8 out of 10. In terms of other films I've watched, I did check out the War of the Worlds movie, the one with Ice Cube in it. And yeah, it is pretty bad. Probably the worst film of the year I've seen so far. I give it a 3 out of 10 at best. Just sitting at a screen, it's just not exciting. I don't know. A different recent film that I watched on Max, starring Paul Rudd and Tim Robbins, is Friendship. That one really kept me guessing. Like, this dad who has trouble making friends with people. Ironically, Paul Rudd had a character with that problem in I Love You Man, but it's different here. And, the way that his interactions with Paul Rudd and his friend group goes down, and this thing that happens in a sewer, it kind of gets a little bit scary or suspenseful, like midway through. It's like, what even is this movie? But it's also got funny moments, and yeah, like, I don't want to spoil it, but you got to check out Friendship. I think I give that one an 8 as well. I also watched Megan 2.0, or Mathregan 2.0, whatever you want to call it. I did not really like the shift to a more action-y tone. It's more of a sci-fi action movie. It's very exposition heavy. I was missing the horror elements. The campiness was still there, but it didn't feel as effective. I do kind of wonder if changing the screenplay writer from Akilah Cooper to Gerard Johnstone, who directed both films, I wonder if that might have had something to do with the tone shift. But yeah, I was just not impressed, which was a shame. I give it a 5 out of 10. Finally got around to watching Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and I thought it was okay. I give it a 6 out of 10. Maybe it's different for the diehard Sonic fans, but to me, it kind of just feels like pretty much the same stuff as the first two movies. It's like, we wait a couple years for each of these movies, and for what? I kind of don't really understand why, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe the games are a lot more fun than the movies are, so who knows. On TV, I've also finally started watching the final season of Resident Alien. I've only seen the season premiere, so I don't really have much to say about it yet, other than I do kind of wonder if maybe season 4 on a surface level is supposed to kind of reflect where things left off at the end of Twin Peaks season 2. but it might be a stretch, but I don't know. I did watch the new episode of South Park. That to me feels like the show to watch these days. It, has really relevant commentary, and that's been South Park in a nutshell for years and years and years. This time I'm sure some of you know about some of the recent events with, like, talk shows and the FCC. So the FCC was one of the subjects in this South Park episode, and there's also, stuff related to the conflict several time zones over. And I think maybe I had other expectations for the episode, speculating how it would touch on things or what it would be about. And so I was surprised when it flew by quickly. But after the fact and hearing other people's takes on the episode, I appreciated it more after the fact. Futurama also dropped a new season. What is it? Season 13 now? 14? Something like that. And there were some nice moments here and there. The episode with the pig was really depressing, and then the finale kind of just felt like a regular episode. So I don't know. I feel like Futurama, it still has some good moments, but it's hard not to compare it against King of the Hill and how that revival just was a slam dunk. That Hulu revival. That's why we're comparing these. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it, unless I'm forgetting anything. But yeah, this podcast will be back in 2 weeks, this time talking about Wolfman, the version in that delayed replay universe where Ryan Gosling starred in the role. So without further delay, have a good day.